Ready to go?
Yeah, I'm excited to try this new restaurant that you got on our itinerary.
Oh yeah, me too.
Alright. Did you make a reservation?
They said you didn't need reservations, or you couldn't really make them.
Oh, okay, good. I'm glad you looked it up. Alright. Are you sure it's open?
Should be.
It kind of looks dark.
No, it should be open.
I don't think it's open.
I mean, it's the middle of the day. Why wouldn't it be open?
Well, look, there's no lights on and it says closed in the window.
Well, let's park and figure it out.
So, what was the status?
So I ran over, checked, and it is closed. And I don't know why it's closed on.
Did you check the website before you put it on the itinerary? Like what days they're open? Because a lot of restaurants are closed on Mondays.
No, I didn't do all that. I didn't have time to do all that.
Oh, wow. So now what are we gonna do?
I don't know. Fast food? I don't know. I really wanted to go there too because it was famous for this one thing.
Guess we'll have McDonald's again.
Man.
Welcome to the Shar and Joe Show. So this season we're doing all about travel, and I hope you guys had a chance to check out our Wyoming road trip with the kids and our family. We really spent a lot of time not only on the trip but also putting that together, so let us know what you think.
And today we are going to talk about how to plan a trip from start to finish.
Yep. When it comes to planning a trip, you need to know first where you're going and how long you're going to be going. So a lot of that depends on your personal circumstances. So you might only have 2 weeks of vacation from your work. You might want to just get away for a weekend. You might be doing a honeymoon.
Right.
So there's all kinds of different reasons that you might plan a trip.
For us, we like to plan our trips always off season for mostly 2 reasons. One, it's usually more affordable, and 2 is we're okay with missing some items if we need to avoid the crowds, avoid the lines, especially with 2 kids if we are traveling with them. It's just not great and fun to have a little bit extra chaos. So that's how we like to travel. But if you're one of those people that want to see every single thing, you might want to focus on traveling during peak season, but definitely look into some of the ways you can avoid some of that chaos.
Yeah. So, and when we say off peak season, we mean towards the end or beginning of a season. So like if you're going to some place that's really tropical but it's only seasonal, you might hit it up right towards the end of the season, so there's still stuff open, you still get that tropical weather, but you're not dealing with the main crowds in the middle of that peak season. If you do plan peak season, I recommend planning way in advance. So get your tickets, your airline fare, your hotels, all that stuff planned out way in advance. Otherwise you might get there and you're like, oh, I didn't know we had to get tickets 2 months ago for this, now we can't do it, kind of thing. So
It's usually before Labor Day for like around Labor Day?
Yeah, so one key thing is when kids go back to school, there's less people traveling because they don't like to plan trips or pull people out of school.
So we have done a lot of trips right after Labor Day or around that Labor Day time.
Not on Labor Day weekend.
Yeah, not on Labor Day weekend, but like right around that time where kids are back in school and it's still early September where it's warmer if you're needing that kind of weather for wherever you're going.
Yeah. And then we've also, like our Wyoming trip we did in the spring, which was a little risky because there was a lot of snow up in the mountains. So coming into like the Tetons, we could tell like if we came a few weeks earlier, we probably wouldn't have made it.
We didn't even know if we'd be able to get to our cabin because the roads weren't the best, and with the snow we were like, hopefully we can make it out there,
right.
Which we were able to. And overall I think the trip went great. We found out later on that in the peak season for Yellowstone, like how long did you
I mean you can wait hours,
Yeah.
hours just to get into the park, so we didn't have to deal with that. I think the most we waited one day was maybe 30 minutes, which still was a decent amount of time, but once we got in it, everything was fine. So
yeah, so those things definitely help with your overall experience on a trip, and obviously we all want to have this great experience, so it's a few things that you definitely need to think about. So.
And the last thing when you're planning a trip where you want to go is your budget. A lot of people want to go someplace really far away or stay in fancy hotels, but you gotta keep in mind how much money you're willing to spend on a trip and how much everything costs, because you're not only dealing with airfare and hotels, but also your meals, transportation. Once you're there, are you gonna rent a car? Are you gonna pay for a taxi wherever you're going? Are you gonna do any tours? All that stuff starts to add up, and it can add up in a hurry.
Right.
You've been on trips and you just kind of don't think about the little incidentals that happen when you're on a trip.
Right. So what we usually plan for pretty well is for breakfast. And we typically like to stay at a hotel that has some kind of like continental breakfast included in there, just because we get to now eliminate that extra thought about, what are we gonna have for breakfast? It's nice to sit down in the morning, and it's typically pretty early where it doesn't slow down your trip. So I highly recommend it, and worst case scenario, you can always do grab and go, which we've done as well. And if we're really not able to do breakfast, or the hotel that we choose, just looking at the cost, it makes sense not to choose one with breakfast, we will bring like bars and little snacks just to eliminate that morning kind of chaos when you really want to get going, and also to save some money. We're not big on eating out, so if you are, maybe that's part of your experience, but for us it's about being out there and seeing things, so definitely something for you to consider.
Let's get into the nitty gritty. So once we choose a location, like where we're gonna travel and when, the next thing that I do is I start to create a document. So I usually use Google Docs, and first thing I do is put the name of the location, the dates, so like have that information front and center, and then I put a beautiful picture of where we're going for inspiration.
Yeah, it gets all excited.
Yeah, not only for our excitement, but like I love photography, so I appreciate a good shot of what we're gonna see.
Yeah.
And then I'm gonna do a separate episode on how I lay this document out.
Right.
But I'm gonna walk you through just kind of the basic things that I'll put in there. And I think we're a little more detailed, or at least I am, than most people when they plan their trips. I will actually put down exact times, like 7:05 p.m. We're picking up grandma from her house and whatever.
It's
so on and
very
so forth.
detailed, but we're always able to kind of be a little bit flexible at the same time, but it's nice to have a little blueprint so we know what's gonna happen.
Once I create that Google Doc with that first page with our inspiration image and the name of our trip, then the next thing I do is I go into Google and create a map. So there's like under my maps, you can actually create your own maps of locations that either you want to see, or when you're on a trip, like locations that you actually want to visit. So I will actually plot out pretty much anything and everything that is of any interest to me or Charlene, and I'll have her go in there too. And then once we kind of know, like, oh, we must see this spot, we gotta see that, this, maybe if we have time. Once we kind of know all that information from the map, then I will start plotting out times and also like how we're gonna do it, so we're not doing one of these star patterns.
Backtracking and all of that. And sometimes you might look at the map and think, well, this location is kind of far for where we want to be, and we might have to cut that item and maybe just kind of put it on the side if we have extra time at some point. But typically if it gets cut, it gets cut.
Right. Yeah. So once we have those locations, it's kind of the putting them in order, and then you got to account for travel time too. So what I'll do is I'll put them in order, and then I start plotting out, like, you know, if this is a road trip, you just plug it in Google Maps. From point A to point B is going to take roughly so on and so forth time. So let's say it takes 30 minutes. I will actually factor that in. And usually I add a little bit extra because you're going to have to make gas stops if it's a road trip. If you're traveling internationally, there's going to be some kind of unexpected thing pop up. Like accidents
Getting
can happen.
food or eating food, depending.
Right.
Yeah.
And you got to factor in grabbing food. So
this is something that I am really bad at, is making sure things are open and not closed for the season or closed when the time that we're actually going to get to that location. I am infamous for doing this, and Joe is really good at double checking now and making sure.
Yeah, I couldn't, when me and Charlene first met, not only in dating, but even in our first year or two of marriage, I couldn't tell you how many times I drove really far to get someplace. And I'm like, did you check to see if it was open or still exists? So we get there and we're like, all right, now we gotta make a plan B. So there's stuff like that that can be avoided if you just look in advance. Does this place require advance reservation? Did we book it for the right day? And a lot of times we won't even book our tickets until we have our template roughed out, like probably say like 75% done. It's because we've had it, like one time it was actually our honeymoon, we booked something and it happened to be for the day before, and we showed up and they're like, this isn't for today. And luckily they had an opening, so they were able to accommodate us. There's nothing worse than getting somewhere you're all excited about and finding out you booked the wrong time.
Yeah, and also sometimes the weather can decide like when you want to do something. When we went to Maine, some of those boat trips, we wanted to make sure that we could kind of keep an eye on the weather before booking. So certain things like that, you want to make sure that you wait to book. If you can, you know, definitely call them and make sure, but you never know with the weather, it might be a better day to go. So then you can just kind of flip-flop your itinerary depending on what the weather is like.
So you just let the cat out of the bag of where we traveled to.
Uh-oh. Well, you guys have something to look forward to. It's gonna be a while though, so, but it's worth the wait. Okay, so backstory on me, I actually worked at Yelp, but before I started working there, I absolutely loved their reviews, and I was one of those people that always check reviews. So now Google is probably more popular than it was back when I really enjoyed Yelp. So I will check reviews on TripAdvisor, reviews on Google, reviews on Yelp. And those are great resources because sometimes you'll even see tips from other travelers of what you should or shouldn't do. So I highly recommend, especially for places that you know are quote unquote tourist traps, people know what to do or what not to do, and they'll give you advice even on what to wear or what to expect as far as like if you're doing hiking, what the terrain might look like. Don't bring a stroller. Those kind of things that are priceless that you're not gonna find always on the website of that location.
Yeah, because we've been to places like tropical areas or warmer areas, and if we didn't read the reviews, we would be freezing when we go up to the top of some of these hills or mountains, because the weather down below is like night and day difference from what's up in higher elevations. So
and
definitely saves you some bad experiences.
And look at the pictures, you know, you'll see kind of like, oh wow, that shot looks really nice, that's a nice view. Those things are priceless. Even for restaurants, people tell you what to order or what that town is known for. We always like to do that. Like wherever we go, we like to get at least one item for what that area or country is known for.
Right. You don't want to come back home and everybody's like, did you try the whatever? And you're like, no, what is that?
Yeah, and you may not end up going back.
Yeah, so you gotta do the homework before you go. All right, 3 hours later.
No, 20 minutes?
At least 40, it takes you like 20 each way.
We had an interruption. We had to get Elena, and also we had a lot of noise because they're doing work on our building. All right, let's jump into how do you find locations?
Yeah, so we briefly talked about, going into Yelp and all those things, and that's great. But sometimes you gotta figure out the locations first and then find the reviews, because if you just jump into reviews, like you're gonna just get all scattered.
Right.
So how I like to do it, if we're doing a road trip or we're driving like a long distance, I like to break it up because it doesn't feel as daunting to drive like 10 hours straight to somewhere, or like our Wyoming trip. So we definitely stopped in a lot of places along the way, as opposed to just trucking it all the way there and making it miserable for everybody. And we've done that before. We've tried the miserable way, and people got sick, people were angry.
Nightmare. Yeah.
It was a nightmare. So I do recommend, if you're doing a lot of driving, just plan out some stops along the way to stretch your legs, see something cool. So the way I do that is I'll Google like the major cities we might be passing through, if there's not real big cities. And a lot of times I'll actually even zoom in on the Google satellite view as on the road that we're traveling, and see if I find anything that looks interesting along the way. So sometimes it might just be like, oh, here's a historic landmark for whatever.
Yeah. He'll just look at the satellite view and see something and be like, okay, we should check that out. So my way of finding locations is different. He's the architect way, very detailed. Mine is pretty basic. I will start at TripAdvisor and look at their top 20, top 100 places to see for that city.
Right.
And I'll start there. I'll grab sometimes a little bit of notes and put it into our document. And then I expand a little bit out to some blogs, because sometimes bloggers have done that road trip before, or they just have more detailed information. So I start with just the basic, which if you're a newbie, you can just start there and stop there. But if you want to expand out, you can now do the blogging and read some of that. And then from there, I'll now jump into, now that I have a list of, whoa, these are the places that I really am interested in, then I'll now jump into some of those reviews and take a deep dive. So let's jump into budgeting. We're not gonna go too in depth because I think we're gonna do a real longer form video of that. But we'll just talk a little bit about what sites we use and that kind of thing.
Yeah, so when you're booking your trip, like if you're flying somewhere and you gotta stay in a hotel, like don't just pick out like one hotel line or one airline. Like a lot of times we'll use websites like Expedia where they compare different airlines. If you've been staying in like the same hotel, like don't be afraid to use your points, because they do expire at a lot of these places. Sign up for those mileage and those hotel rewards, and just keep a spreadsheet with like, okay, for Expedia, this is our rewards number. Just keep track of those things. A lot of times if you're working in corporate, they'll let you actually accumulate personal points if you sign up for those rewards memberships, so take advantage of that.
So the last topic we want to talk about is packing, which we are also going to have a more in-depth video on, but I think it's nice to give you a little bit of background on that.
Yeah, nothing's worse than showing up to a place, like let's say there's a pool at the hotel, but oh, I forgot to bring my swimsuit. I didn't know that was gonna be here.
So packing for us, we're big on packing food for road trips. That's how I grew up. When you have kids, even if you enjoy restaurants, sometimes they just don't enjoy the food at restaurants anyway, so it's not worth the time and spending.
Right.
So you think about, what different meals you're gonna need, what snacks you're gonna need. Look at the weather. Very, very important. See what the weather's like. Just because it's a tropical location doesn't mean it's gonna be exactly what you expected. And bring those ponchos. We learned that.
So we got these blue ponchos from a trip that we did to Niagara Falls. And I swear me and Charlene probably wore them on like 6 different
till the wheels fell off.
Yeah, until they were ready to be tossed. And to be honest, like they packed up small, and they were a lifesaver when we did get that unexpected rainfall.
Do we have some more ponchos? You should always bring those, I think.
Bring some kind of raincoat.
Yeah, umbrellas, all of that kind of stuff, because you never know. When you get soaking wet, it just makes your day absolutely miserable. Just thinking ahead, I think, is the main thing about packing, is looking at your itinerary and then kind of taking it from there to figure out.
So make a packing list and include that in that spreadsheet in that document that you make. It's our last thing and we always print it off and just go through keys, wallet, swimsuit, underwear, socks, like making sure that you don't miss all those little tiny details. Or like when you're running out the door, you know, it's always hectic on the day that you leave. You're trying to, you know, get people to water your plants or get your mail, walk your dog if you have a pet, that kind of thing. And the last thing you want to do is be thinking like, do I have everything? So I just want to summarize real quick like what we talked about this episode. So the first thing is picking your location. So what we talked about is figuring out what time of year and how much time you have first before you even select where you're gonna go, because you don't want to plan a European trip and then find out you only have 4 days off of work. That's kind of a tight trip. You'll be miserable with your jet lag on both ends. The next thing that you want to do is create an itinerary, and I use Google Docs because I can share it with Charlene. I can list out everything. I can put a link to any helpful websites. I can put a link to our Google map. So that was actually the next thing, like plot out the locations that you want to visit. And you can even color code them
and
by different days. You can add notes, all sorts of things. So check out Google Maps. And then and kind of tying back into where you're gonna go, you need to know what your budget is for the trip, because the worst thing is like, oh, we're gonna go here, and then you don't have the funds to cover it, and you don't want to put yourself in a tight spot.
Right.
And then I think the last thing would be just planning out a good packing list.
Yes.
Like that is so underrated, and that includes like if you bought tickets to go somewhere, make sure you print those out, because sometimes you're in the middle of nowhere and your phone's not working, and then you're stuck.
Yeah. Oh, and also download the map.
I was thinking the same thing.
When you're not on the internet and you're out in the wilderness or out somewhere where there's no service, which has happened to us too many times, and I don't know why we haven't learned yet.
So there's an option to do offline maps, like so you select the whole area that you might be going and just download it to your phone. It doesn't take up that much storage.
Yeah.
And it will save you, because nothing's worse than like not knowing where you are or where you're going.
Right.
So
I felt like this video was a bit of a teaser video, because we have all these topics we want to dive into more, but I think we gave you the gist of it. If you have any questions, feel free to leave some down in the comment box. Please subscribe to our channel. We have a lot of fun videos. We even have, should I tell them? No, I'm not going to tell them.
No more spoilers.
No more spoilers. We have some stuff coming. Let's just say stuff, because Joe might get mad if I give away too much. But yeah, hit that subscribe button and we'll see you on the next one.
All right, see you.